What would you do if the man you loved called you crying, saying his teenage daughter had been in a terrible car accident and needed $18,000 for emergency surgery, but something about the story didn't quite add up? My name is Eleanor. I'm 61 years old, and for 8 months I believed I'd found my soulmate, Thomas Bennett, a widowed architect working overseas who understood loss, loneliness, and the possibility of love after heartbreak. He'd introduced me to his daughter Emily through photos and sweet voice messages. She called me Aunt Eleanor in texts. I was planning our future together, the house we'd buy, the trips we'd take, the blended family we'd create. But when Thomas called me in tears saying Emily had been in a devastating accident and needed immediate funds for surgery, I did something that would shatter my world and expose a fraud operation that had stolen over $47 million from victims across 3 continents. I called the hospital to verify the story, and what they told me changed everything. This is how one phone call to confirm a medical emergency revealed a romance scam so sophisticated it involved fake hospitals, fabricated medical records, and even voice actors playing the roles of doctors and injured children. Thank you for being here. I believe this story will help you or someone you love recognize medical emergency scams and the red flags we all need to know. So this is the perfect moment. Hit that like button and subscribe. You guarantee all the next stories without having to search for them. Now, let's begin. I met Thomas Bennett on eHarmony in March 2024, 2 years after my husband Richard died from a heart attack at age 63. Richard and I had been married for 36 years, our entire adult lives intertwined. After he died, I felt like half of myself had been amputated. My 3 adult children worried about me living alone in our family home in Charleston, South Carolina. They gently suggested I try dating again. "Mom, you're only 61, my daughter Anna said. You have decades ahead. Dad wouldn't want you to be alone forever." I resisted. The thought of replacing Richard felt like betrayal, but the loneliness eventually wore me down. I created an eHarmony profile, emphasizing I wanted genuine connection, not casual dating. Thomas's profile appeared in my matches within a week. His photos showed a distinguished man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and warm eyes. His profile was thoughtful. Widowed architect currently working on international projects, father to a teenage daughter, passionate about classical literature and sustainable design. His wife Catherine had died from ovarian cancer 4 years ago. His first message referenced a book I'd mentioned in my profile, The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. "Eleanor, your appreciation for Ishiguro's exploration of regret and missed opportunities resonated deeply. I've spent the past 4 years wondering if I missed my chance at happiness when Catherine died, or if there's still time to find it again. Your profile suggests you're asking similar questions." I read that message 5 times. Someone understood. Someone wasn't offering platitudes about moving on or new chapters. Someone recognized that grief creates a fundamental question about whether life after loss can hold genuine joy or just comfortable distraction. We messaged for 3 weeks before our first phone call. His voice was warm, educated, with a slight British accent that matched his profile claim of having been born in London and educated at Cambridge before moving to the United States. When I asked why he was on an American dating site if he was currently working overseas, he explained, "Because I'm planning to return to the States permanently. My daughter Emily is 15, and I want her to finish high school in America. I want to build a stable life for her. And frankly, I want companionship for myself. Working abroad has been lucrative, but lonely." We talked for 2 hours that first call, about our late spouses, our children, our careers. I'd been a librarian for 33 years. Our fears about starting over in our 60s. He shared vulnerable moments about struggling with single parenthood after Catherine's death, about wondering if he'd be capable of loving someone new, about feeling guilty for even trying. "Catherine's death devastated me," he said quietly. But what devastated me more was realizing I'd taken our relationship for granted. I'd prioritized work over family, assumed we'd have decades together. I don't want to make that mistake again. If I'm fortunate enough to find love a second time, I want to be fully present for it. His words mirrored my own regrets. Richard had wanted to travel more, retire early, spend lazy mornings together. I'd always said later, after the kids graduated, after we paid off the mortgage, after we built more savings. Later never came. By May, Thomas and I were talking daily. Morning texts, lunch break calls, evening video chats, or attempted video chats. The video quality was always terrible. His face would appear pixelated and frozen, audio cutting in and out, before we'd give up and switch to audio-only calls. The internet infrastructure in Dubai is surprisingly poor outside the major business districts, he explained. My project site is in a developing area. They're building a sustainable housing complex for low-income families. Meaningful work, but the logistics are challenging. I accepted his explanations because everything else felt so genuine. We discussed books, shared music, talked about our children. Thomas introduced me to Emily through photos and occasional text messages. A beautiful teenager with long brown hair and her father's warm smile. She'd message me sweet notes. "Dad talks about you all the time. He's happier than I've seen him in years. Thank you for making him smile again." Those messages from Emily solidified my emotional investment. Thomas wasn't just a potential romantic partner. He was a father dedicated to his daughter, and I was becoming part of their family narrative. In June, Thomas started discussing his return to the United States. "My Dubai contract ends in September. I'm planning to relocate to Charleston, if you're comfortable with that. I don't want to pressure you, but I'd like to build a life near you. Emily's excited about finishing high school in America. We could take things slowly, but knowing you're nearby would mean everything." My heart raced at the possibility. After 2 years of profound loneliness, someone wanted to build a future with me. We started making plans. The house he'd look for, near good schools for Emily. Trips we'd take together, how we'd introduce our children to each other, even discussions about eventually combining households. "I want to do this right," Thomas said during one evening call. "I want Emily to have stability, and I want us to have a genuine partnership. No rushing, no assumptions, just 2 people who've survived loss building something new together." It was exactly what I needed to hear. Thoughtful, measured, respectful of both my needs and his daughter's well-being. Then in late July, Thomas asked for money for the first time. It was subtle, almost apologetic. "Eleanor, I'm in an awkward situation. There's a delay processing my contract payment. Bureaucratic issues with the Dubai government. It happens sometimes with international projects. I need to cover Emily's school fees for the upcoming semester, about $3,500. Could you possibly help? I'll repay you the moment my payment clears, probably within 2 weeks." I hesitated. $3,500 was significant, but this was for Emily's education, not for Thomas's personal benefit, and he'd been nothing but generous and thoughtful for months. "Of course," I said. "How should I send it?" He provided wire transfer details to an account he said belonged to Emily's school in London, where she was currently enrolled in a private international academy. I sent the money that afternoon. Thomas called immediately, his relief palpable. "Eleanor, thank you. You've saved me from an embarrassing situation. I'll repay you the moment my accounts are sorted. I can't tell you how much this means." For 48 hours, I felt good about helping. Then came the next request. And the next. And over the following months, a pattern emerged that I was too emotionally invested to recognize as anything but a series of unfortunate circumstances requiring my support. But when Thomas called me in tears on October 12th, saying Emily had been in a car accident, something finally shifted, and I did the one thing that would expose everything. I decided to verify his story. Was I about to discover a truth that would destroy everything I believed about the man I loved? Between July and early October, Thomas asked for money 7 different times. Each request came with detailed explanations and emotional appeals that made refusal feel callous. $5,200 for Emily's unexpected medical expenses after she developed a severe allergic reaction requiring hospitalization in London. $7,800 for Thomas's emergency return flight to London when Emily's allergic reaction happened, plus hotel expenses while he stayed with her. $4,500 for legal fees related to Thomas's Dubai project. apparently a dispute with contractors that required attorney intervention. $12,000 for a bridge loan, while his contract payment remained delayed, needed to maintain his business operations and prevent default on obligations. $6,300 for Emily's therapy sessions after she'd struggled with anxiety about her mother's death. Thomas wanted the best psychiatric care for her. $8,400 for emergency home repairs at Thomas's London residence where Emily stayed. Apparently, a pipe burst caused significant water damage. By October, I'd sent him $47,700. My retirement savings, which had been carefully built over decades, were significantly depleted. But Thomas's promises were constant. The payment will clear next week. I'll repay everything with interest. You're investing in our future together. My children grew increasingly concerned. Anna confronted me in September. Mom, you've sent this man almost $50,000 and you've never met him in person. Have you even video chatted clearly? Have you verified any of his stories? I became defensive. Anna, you don't understand. Thomas is a good man dealing with difficult circumstances. He's shown me his project documents, Emily's school records, medical bills. Everything is legitimate. Have you verified those documents independently? I hadn't. I'd accepted everything Thomas sent at face value because I trusted him, because I loved him, because the alternative, that I was being systematically defrauded, was too devastating to consider. But Anna's questions planted doubt that grew quietly over the following weeks. Why had every payment timeline Thomas promised been delayed? Why did new emergencies always arise just when previous ones were supposedly resolved? Why, after 8 months of daily communication, had we never had a clear video conversation? Then, on October 12th, at 3:47 a.m. Charleston time, my phone rang. Thomas's name appeared on the screen. I answered groggily. Eleanor. His voice was shattered, sobbing. Something terrible happened. Emily. There was an accident. A car accident. She's in surgery right now. I'm at the hospital. I don't know if she's going to make it. I was instantly awake, heart pounding. Oh my God, Thomas. What happened? Is she okay? Between sobs, he explained. Emily had been in a car with friends when another vehicle ran a red light and struck them. The other 3 teens suffered minor injuries, but Emily had severe internal bleeding and head trauma. She was in emergency surgery at King's College Hospital in London. The doctors said she needed immediate specialized treatment that wasn't fully covered by insurance. They're saying she needs $18,000 for the surgery and intensive care, Thomas said, his voice breaking. Without it, they can't proceed with the full treatment she needs. Eleanor, I'm begging you. I know I've asked for so much already, but this is my daughter's life. I'll pay you back everything. Sell my house, liquidate my retirement, whatever it takes. But right now, I need to save Emily. The desperation in his voice was visceral. I could hear hospital sounds in the background, beeping machines, muffled announcements, the ambient noise of a medical facility. It sounded real. Thomas, of course, I'll do whatever I can. How quickly do you need it? Within 6 hours. The surgery window is closing. If we delay, the internal bleeding could cause catastrophic damage. $18,000. It would nearly drain what remained of my accessible savings. But how could I refuse when a 15-year-old girl's life was at stake? I'll arrange the wire transfer immediately, I said. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you. You're saving her life. I'll never forget this. He provided account details for what he said was King's College Hospital's International Patient Payment Department. I hung up and sat in my dark bedroom, shaking. Poor Emily. That beautiful teenager whose messages had been so sweet, whose relationship with her father I'd admired, who'd called me Aunt Eleanor and talked about us all being a family. But as I started to get dressed to drive to my bank when it opened, something nagged at me. A small voice asking questions I'd been suppressing for weeks. Why would a hospital require immediate payment before performing life-saving emergency surgery? Weren't there laws about stabilizing patients regardless of payment ability? I opened my laptop and searched King's College Hospital London Emergency Payment Policies. The hospital's website clearly stated, emergency treatment is provided immediately regardless of payment status. Financial arrangements are discussed after stabilization. My hands started shaking. If the hospital provided emergency care regardless of payment, why was Thomas saying they wouldn't proceed without $18,000 up front? I looked at the account details Thomas had provided. The wire transfer was to KCH Medical Services Limited, not King's College Hospital directly, but supposedly their payment processing company. It felt off, so I decided to check his background online. But this time, instead of searching for Thomas, I did something different. I called King's College Hospital directly. It was 9:15 a.m. London time. I found the hospital's main number on their official website and called. A receptionist answered, "King's College Hospital. How may I direct your call? I'm calling from the United States about a patient who was supposedly admitted early this morning after a car accident. Her name is Emily Bennett, age 15. Can you confirm she's currently in your care? One moment, please." I waited, my heart hammering. The hold music felt interminable. The receptionist returned. "Ma'am, I don't show any patient by that name in our system. Are you certain she was brought to this facility? She was supposed to be in emergency surgery for internal bleeding and head trauma. Her father told me she's there right now. I've checked our emergency department admissions, surgical schedules, and intensive care unit. There's no Emily Bennett. Additionally, we haven't had any teenage car accident victims admitted in the past 24 hours. The room tilted. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Yes, ma'am. If someone told you a patient is here, that information is incorrect. I'd recommend contacting them directly for clarification." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in stunned silence as reality crashed down. Emily wasn't at King's College Hospital. There had been no car accident. The emergency surgery was fictional. The desperate father crying about his dying daughter was performing a script. Everything, every conversation, every photo, every sweet message from Emily, every crisis requiring money, all of it was a fabricated story designed to extract maximum funds from someone whose only crime was being lonely and believing in love after loss. Thomas Bennett didn't exist. Emily didn't exist. I'd sent $47,700 to criminals who'd weaponized my grief, my loneliness, and my capacity for compassion. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt cold rage. Because if they'd lied about Emily's accident, they'd lied about everything. And I was going to find out exactly who they were and make sure they faced consequences. What I was about to discover would reveal that this wasn't just a romance scam. It was part of a coordinated fraud operation that had perfected the medical emergency playbook and used it to steal tens of millions from victims worldwide. I didn't confront Thomas immediately. Instead, I did what I should have done months ago. I started investigating every detail of his story systematically. First, I reverse image searched every photo he'd sent me. The photos of Thomas were stolen from a British architect named David Morrison, who'd posted them on his professional website years ago. David Morrison had even posted a warning on his LinkedIn. "My photos have been stolen by romance scammers. If someone using my image contacts you requesting money, please report it immediately." The photos of Emily belonged to a teenager from Australia who had a public Instagram account. Her real name was Sophie Chen, age 16. Completely unaware her photos were being used to manipulate grieving widows into sending money for fake medical emergencies. I searched for King's College Hospital Emily Bennett car accident October 2024. Nothing. I searched London news for any car accidents involving teenagers. Nothing matched Thomas's story. I examined the documents Thomas had sent over the months: project contracts, Emily's school records, medical bills, legal documents. I sent them to my son-in-law Marcus, who works in corporate fraud investigation. Within hours, he confirmed they were all fabrications. "Eleanor, these are PDF forgeries. The letterheads are crude copies. The signatures are digital pastes. The formatting doesn't match legitimate institutional documents. Whoever created these has done this before. They're professional fraud documents." The realization of how comprehensively I'd been deceived was crushing. But I channeled the devastation into action. I filed reports with the Charleston Police Department, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, and the Federal Trade Commission. I documented every conversation, every wire transfer, every photo, every promise. The FBI agent who called me back, Special Agent Michael Torres, was both sympathetic and blunt. "Ms. Eleanor, I'm sorry this happened. You're describing a sophisticated romance scam operation, likely based overseas. The medical emergency variant is particularly cruel because it exploits not just romantic feelings, but also compassion for supposedly injured children. We've seen a significant increase in these cases over the past 2 years. Can you recover my money? Unlikely. These operations move funds through multiple countries and accounts very quickly. By the time you sent the money, it was probably already converted to cryptocurrency or moved through money laundering networks. But your report helps us track patterns and potentially identify the operators. What should I do about Thomas? He's probably waiting for me to send the $18,000 for Emily's surgery." Agent Torres paused. "Actually, if you're willing to cooperate, we'd like you to stay engaged with him. Don't let him know you've discovered the fraud. Continue the conversation, gather more intelligence, and we'll monitor communications. Your case might connect to larger operations we're investigating." The thought of continuing to talk to Thomas, knowing everything was lies, made me nauseated. But if it meant stopping him from victimizing others, I'd do it. I messaged Thomas. "I'm at my bank now arranging the wire transfer. They're asking questions about large international transfers, fraud prevention protocols. It might take a few hours to process. How's Emily doing?" His response came immediately. "She's out of surgery but in critical condition. Every hour counts. Please tell your bank this is a legitimate medical emergency. Time is running out." The manipulation was so transparent now that I'd recognized it. The artificial urgency, the emotional pressure, the implication that any delay would result in a child's death. It was calculated psychological warfare. Over the next week, while pretending to have banking difficulties delaying the transfer, I worked with Agent Torres to document everything. The FBI traced Thomas's phone number to an internet calling service routed through Nigeria. The email addresses he'd used showed IP addresses from Ghana and Ivory Coast. The bank accounts he'd provided for wire transfers were registered to shell companies in multiple countries. "Eleanor, your case connects to at least 43 other victims we've identified," Agent Torres explained during one briefing. "Same approach, same medical emergency playbook, same fake daughter named Emily. Total losses exceed $3.8 million. We believe you're all being targeted by the same organized fraud network." The number staggered me. 43 other women, all experiencing variations of what I'd gone through, all manipulated with the same story about a widowed father and his endangered daughter. Agent Torres connected me with 3 other victims willing to share their experiences. We created a group chat. The similarities were eerie. Linda from Ohio. My Thomas was named James Mitchell. Widowed doctor, daughter named Sarah. Car accident in London, needed $22,000 for emergency surgery. I sent it. Then she supposedly had complications requiring more surgeries, more money. I sent $67,000 total before I finally got suspicious and called the hospital. No Sarah Mitchell, no car accident, all lies. Patricia from Texas. Mine was Robert Davidson, engineer, daughter Emma. Same story. Car accident, emergency surgery, King's College Hospital. But mine had a twist. After I sent money for the surgery, he said Emma needed a medical evacuation flight to a specialized facility in Switzerland. Another $35,000. I sent $89,000 total. Jennifer from Washington. Michael Stewart, architect like yours, Eleanor. Daughter Olivia. Same hospital, same accident story. But I got suspicious when he said they needed payment before surgery. I'm a nurse. I knew that wasn't how emergency medicine works. I called the hospital to verify. No patient, no accident. I'd already sent $51,000 for previous emergencies, but that call saved me from sending more. We'd all been targeted with the same script, just with names and minor details changed. The operation was industrial-scale fraud with quality control. They'd perfected a story that worked reliably on a specific demographic. Widowed or divorced women in their 50s and 60s, financially stable, compassionate, and lonely. The daughter emergency is genius from a manipulation standpoint, Patricia noted bitterly. They're not just exploiting romantic feelings, They're exploiting maternal instincts, compassion for children, and the guilt of potentially letting a teenager die because you withheld money. It's psychological torture. She was right. The cruelty wasn't just the theft. It was the weaponization of our best qualities against us. Agent Torres asked if we'd be willing to participate in a coordinated effort to expose the operation. We're working with international law enforcement partners in Nigeria, Ghana, and the UK. If we can keep your scammers engaged while gathering intelligence, we might be able to identify their physical locations and coordinate arrests. We all agreed. What choice did we have? Stopping these predators was the only meaningful response to being victimized. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained contact with Thomas, feeding him excuses about banking delays while the FBI monitored every communication. They traced his messages through multiple VPN servers and identified patterns suggesting he was part of a network operating from Lagos, Nigeria. Then, Agent Torres called with unexpected news. Eleanor, we've intercepted communications between your scammer and his associates. They're discussing you specifically. They know you haven't sent the Emily surgery money yet, and they're planning an escalation. What kind of escalation? Based on their communications, they're planning to stage a death notification. They'll tell you Emily died because you delayed the payment. The goal is triggering guilt so severe that you'll send even more money for funeral expenses, repatriation of her body, memorial services, etc. It's a secondary extraction tactic they use when primary requests stall. The calculated cruelty was breathtaking. They were planning to traumatize me with a fake child's death to manipulate more money from me. When is this supposed to happen? Based on their timeline within the next 48 hours. We want you to record the entire interaction. Their exact words, their tactics, everything. It'll be evidence for prosecution and also valuable for educating other potential victims about how these operations work. 2 days later, at 6:33 p.m. Charleston time, Thomas called. I answered knowing what was coming, recording everything as instructed. Eleanor. His voice was devastated, broken. She's gone. Emily's gone. The bleeding. They couldn't stop it. She died 20 minutes ago. My daughter is dead. He sobbed. Loud, wrenching sobs that sounded genuinely anguished. If I hadn't known it was performance, I would have been destroyed. Oh my God, Thomas. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I'd gotten the money faster. No, he interrupted. It's not your fault. The hospital failed her. But Eleanor, I need your help with something. I need to bring her home. Repatriating her body from London to the U.S. costs $27,000. I can't leave her here. I can't bury my daughter in a foreign country. Please, I know I've asked so much, but please help me bring my little girl home. There it was. The escalation Agent Torres had predicted. Not just exploiting my grief over a fictional dead child, but positioning me as responsible for her death through delayed payment, then requesting even more money to fix the tragedy. I played my role. Thomas, of course. I'll do whatever it takes. Send me the details. But what I was actually thinking was, you're about to face exactly the consequences you've been avoiding, because the FBI had just identified your location and international law enforcement was moving in. What would happen when predator and justice finally collided? Thank you for staying with this story. If you're finding these red flags helpful, hit that like button and subscribe now. You won't want to miss how this ends. Back to the story. While the FBI prepared for coordinated arrests in Lagos, I became deeply involved in the victim support network. Linda, Patricia, Jennifer, and I had expanded our group to include 17 other women who'd been targeted by the same fake daughter medical emergency scam. Our combined losses exceeded $1.4 million. The stories were heartbreaking in their similarities. Every woman was educated, financially stable, recently widowed or divorced. Every scammer had used stolen photos of real architects, doctors, or engineers. Every fake daughter had a sweet name and a tragic accident requiring immediate funds. But what devastated us most was discovering how many women were still actively being scammed and refused to believe they were victims. One woman, Margaret from Arizona, found our support group when researching King's College Hospital Emily Bennett. She'd been communicating with Thomas Bennett for 6 months and had just been told about Emily's car accident. I called her immediately. "Margaret, there is no Emily Bennett. There was no accident. Thomas is a scammer. I was targeted by the same person using the exact same story. Please don't send money." Her response was defensive, almost angry. "How do you know my Thomas is the same as yours? Maybe there are multiple architects named Thomas Bennett. Maybe this is a coincidence. He's shown me photos, documents, Emily's school records, all stolen or forged. I had the same documents verified by fraud experts. They're fake. Please, Margaret, I'm begging you. Call King's College Hospital directly. Ask if Emily Bennett is a patient. They'll tell you she's not there." She hung up on me. 3 days later, she called back crying. She'd finally called the hospital. No Emily Bennett. No car accident. She'd already sent Thomas $62,000 over 6 months for various emergencies. She'd been about to send $18,000 more for the surgery. "I feel so stupid," she sobbed. "I'm a retired accountant. I've managed budgets for corporations. How did I fall for this?" "Because they're professionals," I told her gently. "This is their full-time job. They study psychology, test different approaches, perfect their methods. You're not stupid. You were targeted by experts at manipulation. But not every intervention was successful. A woman named Dorothy in Florida refused all evidence. My Charles is real. We're in love. Yes, his daughter had an accident and needs surgery. But that doesn't make him a scammer. You're all just bitter women who were actually scammed, and now you see scams everywhere. Leave me alone." Dorothy sent $34,000 for her Charles's daughter's emergency surgery. Then another $29,000 for funeral expenses when the daughter supposedly died. Then $18,000 for Charles's therapy to deal with his grief. She refused to listen to any warnings, blocked everyone who tried to help, and eventually disappeared from all social media. "We can't save everyone," Agent Torres told me when I expressed frustration about Dorothy. "Some people are so emotionally invested that accepting the truth would shatter their sense of reality. They choose the comfortable lie over the devastating truth." Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation was revealing disturbing details about the operation's structure. The Thomas Bennett scam was part of a larger network running multiple romance fraud playbooks simultaneously. The widowed soldier, the oil rig engineer, the humanitarian doctor, the successful businessman, and the devoted father with the endangered daughter. Each playbook targeted different demographics and psychological vulnerabilities. The daughter emergency script specifically targeted women with strong maternal instincts and histories of caregiving, women like me who'd spent decades nurturing families and felt compelled to protect children. "They're not just scamming randomly," Agent Torres explained. "They're using data analytics to match victim profiles with optimal fraud scripts. They track which approaches generate highest returns from which demographics. It's fraud as a data-driven business." The sophistication was chilling. These weren't desperate individuals. They were organized criminal enterprises with HR departments, training programs, performance metrics, and profit optimization strategies. The FBI also discovered connections to human trafficking. Some of the scammers operating the scripts were themselves victims. People trafficked to Nigeria and Ghana under false promises of legitimate work, then forced to operate fraud schemes under threat of violence. The moral complexity was overwhelming. Some victims of the scam were talking to other victims forced to perpetrate it. "This is why breaking these networks is so difficult," Agent Torres said. "Even when we arrest operators, we're often arresting exploited workers rather than the actual criminals profiting from the organization. The leadership stays hidden, protected by layers of expendable operators." On November 8th, nearly a month after Thomas had told me about Emily's fake death, Agent Torres called with significant news. "We've identified and located 3 primary suspects operating the Thomas Bennett identity and related scams. Nigerian police are preparing to execute arrests in coordination with Interpol and the UK's National Crime Agency. We need you to make one final contact with Thomas to confirm his active status before we move." I messaged Thomas. "I've arranged the funds for Emily's repatriation. $27,000 is ready for wire transfer. Please send updated account details." His response came within minutes. Eager, relieved. maintaining the fiction even after weeks. Eleanor, thank you. This means everything. Emily can finally rest in peace near her mother. Here are the account details. Agent Torres confirmed. That's what we needed. Arrests happen tomorrow. But the next morning brought unexpected complications that would force me to confront questions I wasn't prepared to answer about justice, revenge, and what victims truly deserve. The arrests happened on November 9th at 6 a.m. Lagos time. Nigerian police, working with Interpol, raided 3 locations simultaneously. They arrested 5 individuals, 3 men and 2 women, and seized computers, phones, hard drives, and financial records. Agent Torres called me with the news. We got them, Eleanor. The people operating the Thomas Bennett scam are in custody. We've recovered extensive evidence, victim databases containing over 300 names, scripts for different fraud scenarios, forged documents, financial records showing they'd stolen over $47 million globally across multiple scam identities. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. What happens now? Nigerian authorities will prosecute them for fraud and related charges. If convicted, they'll face significant prison time. We'll also pursue asset forfeiture to try to recover funds for victims, though realistically, most of the money is gone. Can I see them? Can I know who they are? We can provide basic information about the arrested individuals. Photos, names, ages. But Eleanor, I want to prepare you. This might not provide the closure you're expecting. He sent me a file containing arrest photos and details. I opened it with trembling hands. The 5 arrested individuals were younger than I'd expected. The man who'd likely been the primary Thomas Bennett voice was Chukwu Okonkwo, age 28. The woman who'd probably operated the Emily text messages was Blessing Adeyemi, age 24. The others ranged from 23 to 31 years old. They looked ordinary. Not evil masterminds, just tired young people in police custody. I'd imagined monsters. Instead, I saw humans, which somehow made everything more complicated. Agent Torres called back. Eleanor, there's something else you should know. During interrogation, Blessing Adeyemi, the woman who was probably sending messages as Emily, asked specifically about you. She wanted us to convey a message. What message? She said, "Tell Eleanor I'm sorry about Emily. I have a real daughter, age 6. I did this work so I could feed her. I know that doesn't make it okay, but I want her to know I'm not a monster. I'm just desperate." The words hit me like a physical blow. Blessing had a real daughter. She'd pretended to be a fictional endangered child while mothering an actual child. She'd exploited my maternal compassion while experiencing her own maternal desperation. Is she telling the truth? I asked. Probably. Our intelligence suggests several of these operators have children and families they're supporting through fraud proceeds. The economic situation in Nigeria is dire. Unemployment, inflation, corruption. Doesn't excuse the fraud, but provides context. I didn't know how to feel. Was I supposed to sympathize with someone who'd helped steal $4,700 from me by fabricating a dying teenager? Was her real child's hunger supposed to justify my financial devastation? Over the following weeks, more details emerged about the arrested individuals. Chukwu had a degree in computer science but couldn't find legitimate employment. Blessing had been trained as a nurse but lost her job when the hospital she worked for closed due to funding issues. Another arrested operator, Emmanuel, had been supporting his elderly parents and 3 younger siblings. None of them were wealthy. None were living lavishly. The $47 million the network had stolen wasn't financing luxury lifestyles. It was distributed among dozens of operators, coordinators, money launderers, and organizational overhead. Individual operators probably earned a few $100s per victim, which in Nigeria's economy was substantial but not extravagant. This realization troubled me deeply. I wanted clear villains. I wanted to believe the people who'd victimized me were purely evil, motivated by greed and malice. Instead, they were people trapped in desperate circumstances who'd chosen to escape through victimizing others. The victim support group was divided on how to feel. Linda was unequivocal. I don't care about their circumstances. They made choices. They could have found legitimate work, or asked for help, or done literally anything other than devastating people's lives. My sympathy is reserved for victims. Patricia was more conflicted. I'm angry at what they did, but I also recognize that global economic inequality creates situations where fraud becomes a rational choice for survival. That doesn't excuse it, but it complicates the moral clarity. Jennifer articulated what I was struggling to express. I can hold two truths simultaneously. They victimized me cruelly, and I want them held accountable. And they're humans in impossible situations making terrible choices. Both things are true. I don't have to choose between condemning their actions and recognizing their humanity. On December 3rd, I received an unexpected email through Agent Torres. It was from Blessing Adeyemi, written from prison in Lagos. Mrs. Eleanor, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I think about you every day. When I was sending messages as Emily, I read your responses. You were so kind, so caring. You asked about Emily's schoolwork, her hobbies, her feelings. You treated her like a real person because you have a good heart. I exploited that. I took advantage of exactly the qualities that make you a good person: your compassion, your generosity, your capacity to love a child who wasn't even yours. That's unforgivable. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but it's all I can offer. I read the email 5 times, crying through each reading. Then I did something Agent Torres said was highly unusual. I responded, Blessing, your apology doesn't erase the harm you caused, but I appreciate you acknowledging it. I don't know if I can forgive you. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm still too angry and hurt, but I want you to know this. I hope your daughter thrives. I hope she gets opportunities you didn't have. I hope she never has to choose between feeding her child and victimizing strangers. That's not forgiveness. It's just a mother hoping for another mother's child. Take it for whatever it's worth. I didn't expect a response. But 3 weeks later, another email came through Agent Torres. Mrs. Eleanor, thank you. Your words meant more than you know. I'm trying to use my prison time to learn legitimate skills. Coding, digital marketing, anything that might help me find honest work after release. I want my daughter to be proud of me. Because of your response, I believe that's still possible. Thank you for seeing me as human even when I acted like a monster. The correspondence didn't undo the theft. It didn't recover my $47,700, but it added a dimension to the story I hadn't anticipated. The possibility of redemption, the complexity of judgment, and the strange grace of extending humanity to someone who'd exploited yours. But as the arrests made headlines, an unexpected consequence emerged. Other victims started contacting me, and what they shared would reveal that the Thomas Bennett operation was just one small piece of a much larger and darker industry. The media coverage of the Lagos arrests was extensive. International romance scam network busted. $47 million stolen from victims. My name wasn't mentioned publicly, but the details of the scam, especially the fake daughter medical emergencies, were described in detail. Within days of the news breaking, I received over 200 emails and messages from other victims. Not just victims of the Thomas Bennett script, but variations I hadn't even imagined. The fake son overdose emergency. My boyfriend's son supposedly had a drug overdose requiring immediate hospitalization and rehab. Needed $32,000 urgently. The fake parent's stroke. His elderly mother supposedly had a stroke and needed experimental treatment not covered by insurance. $45,000. The fake sibling's kidney failure. His sister supposedly needed an emergency kidney transplant, and he had to pay for anti-rejection medications. $28,000. Every variation used the same fundamental playbook. Establish emotional connection. Introduce a beloved family member. Create a medical emergency requiring immediate funds. Exploit compassion and guilt to extract maximum payments. The psychological sophistication was evident in how they chose which family member to endanger based on victim demographics. Women with children of their own got fake daughter emergencies. Women who'd cared for aging parents got fake parent medical crises. Women who'd described close sibling relationships got fake brother or sister emergencies. They're tailoring the scam to match your specific vulnerabilities, explained Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychologist specializing in fraud victim trauma, who'd begun working with our support group. They study your social media, your conversation patterns, what you mention about your life. Then they craft a crisis that precisely targets your greatest capacity for compassion. I organized a virtual conference for victims in January 2025. Over 400 people attended. We shared stories, cried together, expressed rage collectively, and began processing the complex emotions of being victimized by such intimate betrayals. One participant, Robert from California, shared something that shocked everyone. I'm a man, age 67. Everyone assumes romance scam victims are women, but I lost $94,000 to a woman claiming to be a Ukrainian doctor working in a refugee camp. Her son supposedly needed emergency surgery after being injured in a bombing. It wasn't romantic. It was presented as humanitarian assistance. But it was the same playbook, just targeted at my impulse to help suffering children. His testimony revealed another layer of the scam ecosystem. They weren't just targeting romantic loneliness. They were targeting any vulnerability. Loneliness, compassion, guilt, savior complex, humanitarian impulses, even just the desire to feel useful and important. The FBI's investigation continued expanding. Agent Torres briefed me regularly on new discoveries. The Lagos operation was part of a franchise model. A central organization provides scripts, forged documents, stolen photos, and money laundering infrastructure. Regional operators pay for access and keep a percentage of proceeds. We've identified similar operations in Ghana, Kenya, Ivory Coast, and Malaysia. It's a global industry. The sheer scale was overwhelming. Estimated victims numbered in the tens of thousands. Estimated annual revenues exceeded $3 billion globally, and law enforcement could barely make a dent. For every operation shut down, 3 more opened. In February, I was invited to testify before a Senate subcommittee examining online fraud and elder financial exploitation. I sat in a Washington, D.C. hearing room and told my story to legislators, explaining how the medical emergency scam worked and why it was so effective. Senator, the cruelty isn't just the theft, I said during my testimony. It's the weaponization of our best qualities against us. These scammers study human goodness, compassion, generosity, empathy, and turn it into a vulnerability to exploit. They make us feel ashamed for being kind. That psychological damage lasts longer than the financial loss. One senator asked, Ms. Eleanor, knowing what you know now, what would have stopped you from sending money? I thought carefully before responding. One simple action would have saved me $4,700. Calling the hospital to verify Emily's supposed accident before sending the first dollar. That's all it would have taken. One phone call to check if the emergency was real. But I didn't make that call for months because I didn't want to appear distrustful. The scammers weaponized politeness against me. I was afraid of seeming suspicious or insulting Thomas by verifying his story. That taught me something important. Healthy relationships welcome verification. Only fraudulent ones punish it. That testimony got significant media coverage. Romance scam victim testifies. One phone call could have saved me. The coverage brought more victims forward. Our support network grew to over 1,200 members across 40 countries. But the attention also brought backlash. Victim blaming was pervasive. Online comments. How stupid do you have to be to fall for this? She deserved to lose her money for being so gullible. Lonely old woman desperate for attention. No sympathy. Some were crueler. Anonymous emails calling me pathetic, worthless, an embarrassment to educated women everywhere. The psychological impact of public mockery compounded the trauma of being scammed. Dr. Chen explained this was common. Victims face a double violation. First, the scammer betrays their trust and steals their money. Then, society blames them for being victimized, creating shame that prevents reporting and recovery. The victim blaming is actually protective for the scammers. It keeps victims silent and isolated. To combat this, I started doing media interviews specifically to normalize fraud victimization and reduce shame. I appeared on morning shows, podcasts, news programs, always emphasizing the same message. These are professional criminals using sophisticated psychological manipulation. Being victimized doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. The interviews generated mixed responses. Some people were supportive and grateful. Others were dismissive and cruel. But slowly, other victims started going public with their stories, creating a movement of survivors refusing to be silenced by shame. In March, the restitution process began. The FBI had seized $4.2 million in assets from the Lagos operation and related accounts. After legal proceedings, this would be distributed among identified victims proportionally based on losses. Agent Torres estimated I might recover $6,400, about 13% of my $47,700 loss. It was better than nothing, but it meant $41,300 was gone forever. The money that wasn't seized was already laundered through cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore accounts we can't access, Agent Torres explained. We recovered what we could, but the majority is unrecoverable. I accepted this reality. The money was gone. No amount of investigation or prosecution would change that. But something else was happening that was more valuable than financial recovery. Our victim network was helping people. Every week, someone would post, "I think I'm being scammed. Here's the situation." And experienced victims would respond, "Call the hospital directly. Verify the emergency before sending money. Don't let politeness stop you from protecting yourself." We'd prevented an estimated $2.3 million in losses by catching potential victims before they sent money. That wasn't justice, but it was meaningful impact. In April, Blessing Adeyemi's trial concluded in Lagos. She was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Sentenced to 8 years in Nigerian prison. Chukwu and the others received similar sentences. I felt conflicted about the outcome. Part of me wanted harsher punishment. They'd destroyed lives and deserved severe consequences. Part of me recognized that 8 years in a Nigerian prison was genuinely harsh, and wondered if punishment alone would prevent future fraud or just create more desperate people. Dr. Chen helped me process the ambivalence. You're allowed to hold contradictory feelings. You can want accountability and question whether the justice system addresses root causes. You can be angry at individuals and recognize systemic factors. Moral complexity is okay. The real question wasn't whether Blessing and the others deserved punishment. They did. The real question was whether punishment alone would stop the next wave of desperate people from making the same choice. As spring progressed, I threw myself into prevention work. I partnered with AIARP to create educational materials specifically about medical emergency scams. We produced videos, pamphlets, and workshop curricula teaching people how to verify emergencies before sending money. The key message was simple: verify before you trust. Call the hospital. Check the story. Real emergencies can wait for verification. Fake ones can't. We created a checklist for anyone receiving emergency requests. Call the hospital medical facility directly using a number you find independently, not one provided by the requester. Ask for the patient by name and verify they're actually being treated. Ask hospital billing about their emergency payment policies. Search for news coverage. If it's supposedly a serious accident, reverse image search any photos provided. Ask to speak directly to the supposed injured person, if conscious. Trust your instincts if something feels off. Point number 7 is the most important. I'd emphasize in workshops. Your intuition is detecting patterns your conscious mind hasn't articulated yet. If something feels wrong, investigate before sending money. The workshops reached thousands of people. After one presentation at a senior center in Charleston, an elderly man approached me privately. "Ms. Eleanor, I think I'm currently being scammed. My girlfriend's grandson supposedly needs emergency surgery. She's asking for $15,000. Everything you described matches. The urgency, the emotional pressure, the specific amount. What should I do?" I walked him through the verification process step by step. He called the hospital his girlfriend had mentioned. No patient by that name. No emergency surgery scheduled. He'd been hours away from sending $15,000 to someone who'd been cultivating the relationship for 3 months. "You just saved me," he said, hugging me. "Thank you." Those moments made all the public vulnerability worthwhile. Every person saved was a small victory against the people who'd victimized us. 6 months after discovering Thomas's fraud, I'd achieved something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the peace of recovered money or perfect justice, but the peace of transformed pain into purpose. My therapy with Dr. Chen helped me understand the psychological journey. Eleanor, you experienced a profound betrayal. Someone weaponized your grief, your loneliness, and your capacity for love. That's traumatic, but you've responded by becoming someone who protects others from the same trauma. That's post-traumatic growth. I'd also rebuilt my financial stability. The $41,300 I'd lost was gone, but I adjusted my retirement plans, reduced expenses, and found peace with a more modest lifestyle. Material comfort mattered less than I'd thought. My children had been incredibly supportive throughout. Anna, who'd first questioned my relationship with Thomas, never once said, "I told you so." Instead, she'd helped me file reports, organize evidence, and navigate the emotional aftermath. "Mom, I'm proud of you," she told me during a visit. "Not because you avoided being scammed. None of us can guarantee we won't be deceived. I'm proud because when you discovered the truth, you fought back. You helped other people. You turned victimization into advocacy. That's strength." Her words meant more than any amount of recovered money could have. I also made peace with the complicated feelings about Blessing and the other arrested operators. I didn't forgive them, but I recognized their humanity. I could condemn their actions while acknowledging the desperate circumstances that had shaped their choices. In July, I received an unexpected update from Agent Torres. "Eleanor, Nigerian authorities have approved a restorative justice program for some of the convicted scammers, including Blessing Adeyemi. It allows victims to participate in facilitated dialogues with offenders if both parties consent. Blessing has requested a dialogue with you specifically. You're under no obligation to participate, but I wanted to offer the option." The thought terrified me. Facing Blessing, actually seeing her, hearing her voice, confronting the person who'd helped steal from me, felt overwhelming. But I also felt curious. What would I say to her? What would she say to me? Could anything meaningful come from such a conversation? After weeks of consideration and extensive discussion with Dr. Chen, I agreed. The dialogue happened via video conference in August, facilitated by a trained mediator. Blessing appeared on screen wearing prison clothing, looking exhausted and older than her 24 years. The mediator explained the ground rules. This wasn't a debate. It was an opportunity for me to express the impact of her actions and for her to take accountability. No requirements for forgiveness or reconciliation. I spoke first, reading from a statement I'd prepared. "Blessing, you helped steal $47,700 from me. That's significant money I worked decades to save. But the financial theft wasn't the worst part. You exploited my grief over my dead husband. You weaponized my compassion for children. You made me feel stupid for being kind. You turned love into a vulnerability. That psychological damage is deeper than the money loss." She listened, tears streaming down her face, nodding. Then she responded, "Mrs. Eleanor, everything you said is true. I did all of that. I knew I was hurting you. Every message I sent as Emily, I knew I was lying. I knew you were a real person with real feelings. I told myself you were wealthy and wouldn't miss the money. I told myself everyone in America was rich, and I was just taking from people who had too much. I dehumanized you to justify what I was doing. That's unforgivable. Why did you request this dialogue?" I asked. "Because I wanted you to see me as human, the same way you asked me to see you as human in your email. I'm not a monster. I'm a mother who made terrible choices because I was desperate and afraid. That doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know that I'm using my prison time to change. I'm learning coding, taking business classes, planning to build something legitimate when I'm released. Your email, your willingness to wish my daughter well even after what I did, that changed something in me. It made me want to be the person you hoped I could be." We talked for over an hour. It didn't erase the harm. It didn't recover my money. But it created something I hadn't anticipated: human connection across the victim-perpetrator divide. At the end, the mediator asked if I had any final words. "Blessing, I can't forgive you yet. Maybe never. But I hope you succeed in becoming the person you're trying to be. Not for me, for your daughter. She deserves a mother she can be proud of. Be that person." "I will," she said. "I promise I will." The dialogue didn't provide closure. Trauma doesn't resolve neatly, but it provided perspective. The world wasn't divided into pure victims and evil perpetrators. It was full of complicated humans making choices shaped by circumstances, some of which caused terrible harm. In September 2024, 1 year after I'd first connected with Thomas Bennett, Agent Torres called with unexpected news. "Eleanor, we've identified a new operation using a nearly identical playbook to the one that targeted you. Same fake daughter medical emergency script, same King's College Hospital claims, same $18,000 surgery request. But this time, it's targeting a specific high-value demographic: recently widowed women with substantial assets. We believe they're using data from the Lagos operation to refine their approach." How did they get that data if the operation was shut down? Because we didn't get everyone. The Lagos arrests captured operators, but not the organizational leadership. Whoever designed the scripts, built the infrastructure, and managed the network, they escaped. And they're rebuilding. The revelation was crushing. Everything we'd fought for, the arrests, the testimony, the advocacy, hadn't actually stopped the operation. It had just inconvenienced it temporarily. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "We want to use you as bait. Create a new online persona, make yourself visible as a potential target, and see if they approach you. If we can keep them engaged long enough, we might be able to trace back to the actual leadership this time." It was risky and psychologically challenging, but I agreed. Working with the FBI's cybercrime division, we created Catherine Williams, a 59-year-old recently widowed real estate agent from Atlanta with substantial assets from her late husband's life insurance. We built a complete digital footprint: LinkedIn profile, Facebook account, Instagram showing a comfortable lifestyle, posts on widow support forums expressing loneliness and desire for companionship. Within 2 weeks, Catherine received her first approach: a message on eHarmony from David Parker, architect, currently working in Abu Dhabi. The profile photos were different from Thomas Bennett's, but the bio was nearly identical. Widowed, daughter named Emma, not Emily this time, working overseas, seeking genuine connection with someone who understood loss. I engaged carefully, following FBI guidance. The relationship developed exactly as my experience with Thomas had. 3 weeks of messaging, transition to WhatsApp, phone calls with poor video quality, introduction to daughter Emma through photos and sweet text messages. By October, David was discussing returning to the United States and building a life near me. By November, the first request for money came: $4,200 for Emma's school fees while his contract payment was delayed. I sent the money, actually FBI-provided marked cryptocurrency, and watched the exact same pattern unfold. Each payment led to another emergency. Each crisis was resolved just in time for a new one to emerge. Then on December 8th, David called in tears. "Catherine, something terrible happened. Emma was in a car accident. She's in surgery at King's College Hospital. I need $18,000 for the emergency treatment. Please, I can't lose her like I lost my wife." It was the same script, the same hospital, the same amount, the same emotional manipulation. But this time, I knew exactly what to do. I called King's College Hospital using the number from their official website. "I'm calling about a patient named Emma Parker, age 14, supposedly admitted after a car accident this morning." The receptionist checked. "Ma'am, we have no patient by that name. No teenage car accident victims admitted in the past 48 hours. Exactly as expected. But this time, instead of immediately confronting David, I played along while FBI technical teams traced his communications. "David, I'm so sorry about Emma. I'm arranging the wire transfer now. It should process within 6 hours." Over the next week, while pretending to have banking difficulties, FBI analysts traced David's messages through VPN servers and identified patterns suggesting the operation was coordinating from Malaysia, not Nigeria. "This is a different cell of the same network," Agent Torres explained. "They're decentralized, regional operations in different countries, all using the same scripts and infrastructure provided by central leadership. Taking down one cell doesn't stop the others." The FBI coordinated with Malaysian authorities for raids on suspected locations. But before the operations could execute, something unexpected happened. I received an email from an unknown sender with the subject line, "Stop investigating or people will die." The message was brief. "We know who Catherine Williams really is. We know Eleanor is working with FBI. Stop the investigation now, or we will target your real family. Your daughter Anna, your grandchildren. They will suffer for your interference. This is your only warning." Agent Torres's response was immediate. "Eleanor, we're implementing protective measures for you and your family immediately. This threat is credible. The network knows you're helping us, which means they have intelligence sources we haven't identified yet." Within hours, my daughters and their families had FBI protection. Security systems were installed at their homes. They were briefed on threat awareness and given panic buttons. Anna called me, frightened. "Mom, what have you gotten us into?" "I'm sorry," I said, crying. "I was trying to stop these people from hurting others. I didn't think they'd threaten you." "We'll be okay," she said, her voice steadier than mine. "But Mom, maybe it's time to step back. Let law enforcement handle this without using you as bait. Your safety, our safety, matters more than catching scammers." She was right. But the FBI's operation was so close to identifying the network leadership. If we stopped now, they'd disappear and rebuild somewhere else. I had to make a choice: prioritize my family's safety, or continue the investigation that might prevent hundreds of future victims. There was no right answer, just impossible trade-offs between personal responsibility and collective protection. What would I choose, and what price would that choice demand? The FBI gave me 24 hours to decide whether to continue the operation. Agent Torres was clear about the risks. "Eleanor, if you withdraw, we'll protect your family and pursue other investigative avenues. If you continue, we'll provide maximum security. But I can't guarantee the network won't attempt retaliation. This is your choice." I spent a sleepless night weighing impossible options. My family's safety was paramount. How could I justify putting Anna and my grandchildren at risk? But I also thought about the hundreds of women currently being targeted, the thousands who'd be victimized in the future if this network continued operating. At 6 a.m., I called Agent Torres. "I'm continuing, but only if you can guarantee my family's protection. We'll do everything possible, Eleanor. But you need to understand." "I understand. No guarantees in this work. But the alternative is letting them win through intimidation. I won't do that." The operation accelerated. FBI technical teams had traced David Parker's communications to a compound outside Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Intelligence suggested this was a coordination center for the entire medical emergency scam network. The source of the scripts, the forged documents, the stolen photos, the financial infrastructure. Malaysian police agreed to cooperate with a raid. But first, they needed confirmation that the compound was actively operating fraud schemes, which required keeping David engaged. I sent him the message that would trigger the final phase. "David, the $18,000 is ready to wire. But I need to speak with Emma first. I know she's in the hospital, but can I talk to her by phone? Just to tell her she's going to be okay? It would mean so much to me." This request was designed to force a response that would prove active fraud. If David provided a phone number for Emma or arranged a call, it would demonstrate the operation was creating fraudulent evidence. If he refused, it would reveal his inability to produce the supposedly hospitalized daughter. David's response came 3 hours later. "Catherine, Emma is heavily sedated after surgery. She can't talk yet, but I'll try to arrange a brief call tomorrow when she's more conscious. For now, please send the money so her treatment can continue. Every hour matters." The FBI had what they needed: documented refusal to provide verifiable contact with the supposedly injured child, combined with continued pressure for immediate payment. It was clear evidence of fraud. On December 15th, at 4 a.m. Malaysian time, police raided the Kuala Lumpur compound. They arrested 11 individuals and seized extensive evidence: computers containing databases of over 2,000 active victims, forged medical documents from dozens of hospitals, stolen identity photos, financial records showing the network had stolen over $89 million globally in 18 months. But the raid's most significant discovery wasn't digital. It was human. Among the arrested individuals were 3 people who'd been trafficked to Malaysia under false promises of legitimate work and forced to operate scam scripts under threat of violence. One of them was a 19-year-old woman from Vietnam who'd been imprisoned in the compound for 8 months. Agent Torres called me with the update. "Eleanor, the raid was successful. We've shut down a major coordination center. But I need to tell you something complicated. Several of the people we arrested are victims themselves. They were trafficked and forced to operate scams. The moral lines are blurry here. It was the same complicated reality I'd encountered with Blessing in Lagos. Victims forced to victimize others. Exploitation layered on exploitation. What about the leadership? Did you get them?" Long pause. "No. The compound's managers escaped before the raid. We suspect they had advance warning, possibly from corrupt local officials. We arrested operators and freed trafficking victims, but the people who built and profited from this network are still out there." The partial victory felt hollow. Yes, we'd disrupted operations. Yes, we'd freed trafficked workers. But the actual criminals remained free to rebuild elsewhere. Then came the phone call that would complicate everything further. It was from one of the arrested operators, a Malaysian woman named Aisha, who'd been operating the David Parker identity I'd been communicating with. "Mrs. Eleanor?" Her voice was young, frightened. "FBI said I could call you. I wanted to apologize and to tell you something important." "I'm listening." "I wasn't forced to do this work. I chose it. Not because I was desperate or trafficked, but because it paid well and I convinced myself the victims were rich Americans who wouldn't miss the money. I'm not a victim. I'm a criminal who made bad choices. I wanted you to know that, because FBI keeps saying some of us were forced. I wasn't. I chose this." Her honesty was startling. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I read your testimony to the American Senate. You said the cruelty was weaponizing good qualities against victims. That made me think about what I'd been doing. I'd been telling myself I was just taking money from faceless accounts. But you made me realize I was hurting real people. People who were being kind, compassionate, trusting. That's haunted me. I can't undo what I did. But I wanted you to know I understand now. I see you as human. And I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't Blessing's desperate motherhood justification. This was someone acknowledging they'd made purely selfish choices and harmed others. "Aisha, I appreciate your honesty. What happens to you now?" "I'll be prosecuted in Malaysia. Probably several years in prison. I deserve it. But Mrs. Eleanor, there's something else. The people who ran our operation, the ones who escaped, they're already rebuilding. They have operations in the Philippines, Cambodia, and Nigeria. Shutting down Malaysia won't stop them. They'll just adapt. Do you know who they are?" "Not their real names. We only knew them by online handles. But I can give FBI everything I know about how they operate, how they recruit, how they move money. Maybe it'll help catch them eventually." She provided detailed intelligence to the FBI over the following weeks. Financial networks, recruitment methods, organizational structures. It was valuable information that would help future investigations. But her central point remained true. The network would rebuild. The leadership would adapt. The scams would continue. On December 28th, Agent Torres called with final updates. "Eleanor, we're closing the active phase of this operation. The Malaysia compound is shut down. We've identified 2,147 victims and are coordinating restitution efforts. We've freed several trafficking victims and arrested multiple operators. We're sharing intelligence with international partners to track the escaped leadership. But they're still out there." "Yes, and they'll likely establish new operations. This is an ongoing fight, Eleanor. We win battles, but the war continues. It wasn't the triumphant ending I'd wanted, but it was the realistic one. Partial justice, ongoing struggle, incremental progress against an adaptive enemy. What would this mean for my future, and for all the victims still being targeted right now? 3 months after the Malaysia raid, in March 2025, I stood in a Charleston community center speaking to an audience of 200 people about medical emergency romance scams. I told my story: the fake daughter, the fabricated car accident, the $47,700 stolen through exploiting my compassion. But I also told the fuller story: the arrested operators who were trafficking victims themselves, the complicated moral questions about punishment versus systemic causes, the partial victories and ongoing struggles. I didn't get a Hollywood ending, I told the audience. I recovered about 15% of my stolen money through asset seizures. Most of it is gone forever. The people who designed the scam that targeted me are still free, probably running similar operations somewhere else. That's frustrating and unfair. But here's what I did get. I helped disrupt a major fraud network. I freed people who'd been trafficked and forced into criminal work. I educated thousands of potential victims who can now recognize these scams. I connected with a community of survivors who support each other. I transformed my victimization into purpose. That's not perfect justice, but it's meaningful impact. And sometimes meaningful impact is the best we can achieve. After the presentation, a woman in her 60s approached me privately. "Eleanor, I think I'm currently in a situation like yours. My boyfriend's son supposedly needs emergency surgery for a motorcycle accident. He's asking for $25,000. Everything you described matches: the urgency, the emotional pressure, the specific hospital claims. What should I do right now?" I walked her through the verification process step by step, just as I'd done dozens of times before. Call the hospital directly. Use a number you find independently. Ask if the patient is actually there. Don't use any contact information your boyfriend provides. If they confirm the patient exists and the emergency is real, then help if you choose. If they say no patient by that name, you have your answer. She pulled out her phone right there, found the hospital's official number, and called. I watched her face change as the receptionist told her no such patient existed. "Thank you," she said, crying. "You just saved me $25,000 and months of heartbreak. How can I ever repay you?" Pay it forward. If you encounter someone else in this situation, share what you learned. That's how we fight back, one prevented scam at a time. My victim advocacy work became a permanent part of my life. I consulted with law enforcement on active cases, spoke at conferences and community events, maintained the survivor support network, and continued educating people about verification before trust. The financial loss still hurt. My retirement was less comfortable than I'd planned, but I'd adjusted, found contentment in simplicity, and discovered that purpose was more valuable than material comfort. My relationship with Blessing Adeyemi continued through occasional emails. She completed an online business degree while in prison and planned to start a legitimate digital marketing company after release. I didn't know if she'd succeed, but I appreciated her trying. "Mrs. Eleanor," she wrote in one email, "you taught me that victims aren't abstract categories. They're people with stories, pain, and dignity. I can't undo what I did to you and others, but I can spend my life trying to be someone who builds instead of destroys. Thank you for seeing that possibility in me when I couldn't see it myself. I'd also made peace with the incomplete justice. Yes, the network leadership remained free. Yes, similar scams continued operating globally. Yes, new victims were being targeted every day. But I'd helped some people. I'd prevented some losses. I'd freed some trafficked workers. I'd added my voice to the collective effort pushing back against industrial-scale fraud. In May 2025, 20 months after Thomas Bennett first contacted me, I received a letter from the FBI. They'd recovered an additional $8,200 in seized assets connected to the Malaysia operation. My share would be $1,340. It brought my total recovery to approximately $7,700, about 16% of the $47,700 I'd lost. I deposited the check and donated half to an organization fighting human trafficking in Southeast Asia. The money I'd lost had funded exploitation. The money I recovered would fight it. That felt like a form of justice, even if imperfect. The medical emergency romance scam playbook still exists. Scammers still use it. Women still lose money and trust. But more people now know to verify before they send. More people understand that real emergencies can wait for a phone call to confirm they're genuine. And sometimes, that knowledge is the difference between devastating loss and narrow escape. That's what my $47,700 bought. Hard-earned wisdom I've spent 2 years sharing with anyone who'll listen. 2 years after calling King's College Hospital to verify Emily Bennett's fake car accident, I received an unexpected letter from Sophie Chen, the Australian teenager whose photos had been stolen and used to create the Emily persona. Dear Eleanor, someone sent me an article about your case mentioning that my photos were used. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm 18 now, and learning my childhood pictures were used to hurt people is devastating. I want you to know I've made my social media private and contacted platforms about removing stolen images. Thank you for speaking publicly about this. My mom says your advocacy probably prevented her friends from similar scams. I hope you've found peace. I wrote back. Sophie, you did nothing wrong. The people who stole your images and weaponized your innocent childhood photos, they're responsible. Thank you for your kindness. Your compassion at 18 gives me hope for the future. That exchange felt like closure. Not perfect, but real. If someone you've never met in person tells you their child, our parent, our sibling has a medical emergency requiring immediate payment, stop. Do this before sending any money. Call the hospital directly using a number you find, not one they provide. Verify the patient exists and the emergency is real. Ask about the hospital's emergency payment policies. Search for news coverage of the accident. Trust your instincts if something feels wrong. Real. Medical emergencies can wait for verification. Fake ones cannot. Visit FBI Gov Scams to report suspected fraud. Share this story. Silence helps scammers. Awareness stops them. Comment. Have you ever been asked to send emergency medical funds?